Good morning. I'm Greg Cooley, one of the Sunday school teachers here at First United Methodist Church in Corinth, Mississippi. It's always great to have you with us on these recordings and broadcasts, telecasts, whatever we call these blog things these days, right? We're looking at Job, and here we are. We're up to principle number 18. Just a quick review. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done this. Job, he went from being successful to being miserable. His wife and his friends weren't really supporting him. He'd lost everything. And I've been giving you this anticipation. And that is, we're waiting for God to speak. We had lots of questions and lots of issues and lots of anguish and lots of pain so far in Job. And here we are 90% into it. Because Job's only 42 chapters. In the 38th chapter, God speaks. Now, have you ever anticipated somebody finally answering your questions? I remember one particular time when I was a child, my brother and I had gotten into this vehement argument. In fact, my mother had to separate us, and we were, in the middle teens here, both of us trying to find our sea legs and get our identities, and we were in this heated argument that almost came to blows. And my mother had told us to sit down. Dad's on his way home. Dad had been visiting someone, doing something at the office, and Mother knew that he was supposed to be there at 5 p.m. So we're sitting waiting. Well, and as would be the case, would be my luck, that day Dad had gotten held up at the office, and then on the way home he'd had to stop for gas and to pick up a couple things at the grocery store that my mom had told him to get earlier in the day, and it was almost 6 p.m. by the time he got there. And in my mind, he was supposed to have been there at 5. Now, 5's when he left the office. But in my mind, this guy's an hour late, and we need to get this thing resolved. And I remember my dad walking in, and I had the audacity and the stupidity to say, "Where have you been?" Not the thing for a 15-year-old to ask his father. That's kind of like Job has been. He's had all this anguish and all this pain and all this challenge, and he's asked all kinds of questions of God throughout the reading so far. And finally, God shows up, and God comes walking through the door, speaking through a whirlwind that basically says, "I'm here to take charge, and I'm not here for you to hold me responsible." Like my dad looked back at me and barked at me, "Son, do you know who you're talking to? To ask me where I've been. You sit down over there and I'll get to you when I'm good and ready." And I knew I'd crossed the line. And today, God speaks. This is what God says in Job chapter 38. As he looks at Job, he says it this way: "Have you entered into the springs of the sea? Or have you walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? And have you seen the gates of the deep? Have you comprehended the expanses of the universe? Declare to me if you know all this." In other words, God's here, and God's not ready to answer, "Where have you been?" He's God. He continues on. "Would you tell me where is the way of the dwelling of light, and where is the place of darkness, and that you may take it to its territory, and that you may have discerned the paths of the light? Surely you know this, right, Job?" Who was born then? Who's in charge? And can you tell me the great number of your days? In other words, I'm God. I have all the answers. You need to stop where you are and realize that all this majesty I have and all this power I have, you have nothing compared to it. I love you, and I'm going to send my son to die for you. But I'm going to decide when, and I'm going to decide how deep the ocean is, and what's the expanse of the universe, and the dwelling place and the origin of light. I created all this, buddy. Now, quit yelling at me and sit down. That's basically what God said to him. See, God bolted forth out of that whirlwind. Now, there are 2 or 3 things I want you to know that God doesn't do here. God does not apologize. God doesn't answer any questions initially directly as Job would have wanted him to if Job was setting the agenda this day. God doesn't acknowledge the pain and the issue and the fact that behind Job's back, God's been talking to Satan. God doesn't have to do any of that. He doesn't have to apologize. He doesn't have to acknowledge. He doesn't have to answer. He's God. So what does God do? God does reprove. He does refresh. He does remind. So all the things God doesn't do start with A in my alliteration here. Apologize, answer, acknowledge. And all the things that God does do starts with the letter R. He reproves, He refreshes, He reminds. Now when He reproves, I guess we need to understand what that old word means. If you're less than 50 years old, you probably don't use the word reprove very much, do you? It is an old word, and it's a word that's used a lot in the Bible. So what does it really mean? Again, from Webster's this morning, reprove means to reprimand with the intent of correction. To reprimand somebody with the intent of getting them to correct what they're doing. So when God reprimands Job with the intent of changing what he's doing, He reproves him. What is He doing? He's saying to Job, listen, all this questioning you're doing of me, stop it. I know you're hurting. I have a plan for you. You're supposed to have faith and belief. Stop. Live that life. I'll get to it in my time, my holy time. He reproves him with the intent of correcting him into a more faithful person, a stronger person, a more believing person, a better example of what we're supposed to be. God's saying, stop, turn, change. He's reproving him. Then the next thing He does is He refreshes Job's idea of what this relationship's supposed to be about. Oh, by the way, you're not the one who asked me where I've been when I walk in the door at 6 p.m. You're the one who waits. Now, this sounds like almost a relationship where God has a higher position, right? This sounds like a relationship where I'm going to have to wait to get my turn. This sounds like a relationship where I don't deserve a whole lot. He has all the authority. Now, those of us in the 21st century don't want to think about that, do we? We don't want to think about not having our rights and not having our position and not having you respect me. Now, I didn't say God didn't respect Job. I didn't say that God was going to take away Job's life or Job's future ability to enjoy life. I just said God's reminding Job, I'm the Almighty, as we learned last week. Sometimes I do need to be reminded of that, don't I? Sometimes I need to be reminded of His holiness. Sometimes I need to be reminded of His power. Sometimes I need to be reminded that He is the Creator God. He's not there as my cosmic bellhop, where I ring the bell and He comes and does for me. Then He goes back away so I can live my life like I want to live it. No. God is refreshing the idea of this relationship to Job in a position, from a position of authority, from a whirlwind. I can only imagine what God's voice sounded like that day. And then after God reproves, reprimanding with the intent to change and correct, and God refreshes the idea and the concept of this relationship, God reminds him, you were wrong. You ever been wrong and caught in the wrong? Ever had your hand in the cookie jar and Mom walk in the room? Ooh. What happens when we're wrong? Well, the same thing happens with us and our family member, or us and our employer-employee relationship, or us and the government. They don't want this to happen again. We're reproved. We're reprimanded. Maybe arrested. Maybe if something's filed against us. We're reminded of how this whole thing works, and the law is the law, and I need to fit within it, and my relationship to it. And being wrong is very uncomfortable, isn't it? Now, before you were caught in the wrong, did you know you were wrong? Did you know you were doing something you shouldn't have done? That, maybe I'll get away with it. Do you think Job knew that he and his friends were wrong? Do you think Job's wife realized she was wrong? Or did they do like we do, which is our good and almost bestowed upon right as an American, and that is justify. I justified why I was doing what I was doing, even though I know it's wrong. This is what kids are really good at, right? You know, Mom walks down the hall, opens the door, and says, "Ooh, look at your room. I knew there was a smell wafting from there. Clean that room, or you can't go out tonight, or give me your cell phone." And the kid comes up with an instant, almost like they have rehearsed this, excuse, right? Oh, I've been busy. I've been studying so much. You've been working me so hard. I've had to mow the grass. I've had to trim this. I've had to wash the dishes. We can instantly come up with justification for our wrongs, can't we? We're going to be inspired next week when we see what Job did. And I'm going to give you a little preview right now. So what did Job do? Job responds with relief and with surrender and with total humility. You know, when my dad came in and I said, "Where have you been?" and he put me in my place, I was really relieved he was there. Finally, we're going to get this thing resolved between my brother and me. And, there's a possibility here I will come down on the right side. And it's just going to be good to get this off my chest. Have you ever had issues you're dealing with and you just can't wait for the relief? Whether you win the argument or not, you just can't wait to get it over with. I remember the last time that those of you who are listening who are under the age of 40, you're going to be offended by this, but they used to paddle you at school. Yeah. corporal punishment. And sometimes it seemed to me that the coaches or the assistant principal took some sort of pleasure from this. But I remember the last one I got in the 8th grade. And I went in there and I sat down, and the principal was explaining to me and the other 2 or 3 culprits what we had done wrong and why we were going to be punished and when he's going to call my mom and how many lines I'm going to have to write. And when he tells the coach how many suicides and line drills I'm going to have to run, and on and on and on. And my wise-cracking self just blurted out, "Let's get it over with." I think I got an extra lick or two. But I was just craving the relief. That's where Job is. Job was craving the relief that finally God would speak to him and acknowledge him and come and do whatever God's going to do. But please, let's get to it. Job did crave relief. Number 2, what did Job do? Job surrendered. I'm sorry, God. I shouldn't have talked like that. I shouldn't have tried to take this into my own hands. I shouldn't have tried to be the captain of my destiny. I should have believed you. I should have trusted you. I should have had faith. And what else does Job do? He shows true humility. Not just the word kind of humility where we give it lip service, but he broke down. Along with the surrender, the physical and the mental surrender, he gave spiritual humility. I'm sorry. I've got true remorse here. I shouldn't have done that. Now, next week, we're going to look deeper into what true humility is. But let me just tell you, humility, when you get to surrender and humility, humility brings with it no pretense of position. The old-timers used to call it falling prostrate, not prostate, prostrate at his feet, just falling out. I'm not standing before you, God. I'm falling out. I'm giving my entire position to you. I'm not trying to stand here and hold my ground, because the ground belongs to you, and I acknowledge it. I'm not worthy to stand before you. I just give it to you, and I'm humbled. I hope as you listen to this today, you realize that God is working in your life as He is for some reason. And that reason is God's. You won't understand it sometimes. He doesn't necessarily owe you an explanation. But He's working for your ultimate good and the good of His kingdom. I can tell you that with all belief within my soul. Now, right now, it may be like Job. You may be feeling ostracized. You may feel the pain. But God has a plan. And one of these days, you're going to see that plan. And you're going to look back on this time and almost thank God you went through this. It's not easy. But I hope as you face your challenges today, you realize He is God. He is your Father. And He does love you.